There are all kinds of ways that companies are creating value in new ways that may sound crazy at first. And one thing we all have to be open to is those kinds of ideas. And then we have to be searching for them, figuring them out. And so I don't care what business you're in. We have to keep creating value in new ways and much faster than ever before.
Welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman, your host, founder and president of the Keynote Curators. Today, our guest is Geoff Colvin, editor-at-large at Fortune magazine. Geoff has covered economic, political, technological, and competitive forces disrupting business and how top leaders and companies adapt and transform to win in spite of them. Geoff's big takeaway is that winning companies and leaders summon the courage to act. They stop protecting the past and start inventing the future. Geoff has a wide range and breadth of knowledge in all subject matters. You're going to have takeaways that you can use right away that are going to make an immediate lasting difference in your business and personal life. We appreciate you joining us. Thanks for listening. You're going to be smarter for it. Hello and welcome everybody to today's version of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Deckman. I'm your host, founder and president of the Keynote Curators. And our guest today is the incomparable Geoff Colvin. Geoff, thanks for joining us.
Seth, thank you very much. It is a pleasure and I appreciate it.
Well, we're excited to have this conversation, so let's get started. You know, not only have I booked you and met you in person and follow you and your writing, but it truly is a privilege and an honor to have you because for me, you're a font, if you will, of knowledge and just a wide breadth of experience that it's always great to get your insights. And that's what I'm looking forward to in this podcast.
Well, I can't wait. I think After a wonderful thing like that, it's best that I say as little as possible. Actually.
Right. Key, Spartan and potent, right? That's the idea. Which I think is chapter 2 of your next book, something like that. So Geoff, let's just jump right into the deep end. I want your thoughts, your views, kind of a panorama of the war for talent. And, you know, I've used this word war. I don't love it, but the challenge or the future of work, people often call it. Out of the pandemic, many people retired early that were in the fortunate position to be able to do that. We lost a lot of the workforce. Frankly, 1 million people died. Whatever percentage of those million were in the workforce passed on. Other jobs were just simply eliminated and then not brought back. And there's been just a tremendous, just on the statistical part of the workforce, impacted in a negative sense, I guess, if employment is your measurement. And then, of course, the shifting sands, if you will, hybrid, virtual, and all the different iterations of today's modern workforce, freelancing, et cetera, et cetera. I know you've written books on talent, on the human being, and I just would love to get your panorama of what's going on. And lastly, it's a 28-part question, Geoff. Most of our listeners are in the meeting profession, event planners, conference planners, meeting professionals. So, you know, it doesn't have to wholeheartedly be oriented towards them, but, you know, any anecdotes that would be most useful and most germane to their industry would even be better.
Yeah, actually, the meeting and conference industry is a fantastic example of everything I want to talk about here in response to what you've said. The value of humans has not declined. It has only increased over these past 3 years. And it's very easy to see. I mean, even today, when supposedly we're about to go into a recession, or at least might be sometime soon, the unemployment rate is the lowest it's been in 53 years. That's not supposed to happen at times like these. But it does happen because employers desperately want more people. They need more people. And as you say, we lost part of the labor force. Even of the labor force that we still have, labor force participation is not back up to where it was pre-pandemic. And that's somewhat of a mystery. There are probably several factors involved, but that's the way it is. So employers across the economy are desperate for human capital for employees. Yeah. In fact, in my talks, I sometimes show a real billboard that was put up by the business leaders in Springfield, Missouri. They just got together in these huge billboards that say, if I may say what it actually says, get off your butt, get to work. And then underneath that, it says, apply anywhere. All right. They're desperate. Apply anywhere. They don't care. They just need people. Now, the related element here that has to do with, are we going to have work from home? We're going to have big return to the office? What's going on? We have been reminded of the extraordinary, and I would even say magical power of in-person human interaction. That is nothing new. The research on this has been good and plentiful for decades. But what we are rediscovering is that when we are in person, face to face, a magic happens that does not happen in any other way. And that's not just happy talk. There is good research. When we are in person, face to face, the pupils of our eyes dilate and constrict in response to one another. We're not aware of it happening, but in the brain, it is building trust between us. If we're not in person, face to face, it doesn't happen. We unconsciously mimic each other's posture, our tone of voice, even our accent. Again, we're not aware of it happening, but it happens. And it only happens in person, face to face. So look, the meeting and conference business, I bet everybody's having the same experience I'm having, which is I go around to organizations that may not have had a big conference in the past 2 or 3 years. People are hungry for this. People are so grateful to be able to get together. And I sometimes say to them, why are we here? We could have done this remotely. Why are we here? We're here for a really, really good reason. Magic happens in person, face to face, that simply doesn't happen in any other way.
Yeah, you point to research and some of the trade associations of whether it's meeting professionals or the hotel and restaurant industry associations, where there really is decades-long research around the value and, dare I say, the ROI on being together. Statistics, I'm kind of generalizing here, but a deal gets closed in 1 or 2 meetings in person, and having to do it over the phone or virtually, it takes 8 times as long, which is money, which is time, which is resources. And then it slows everything else down, whether it's manufacturing a product or providing a service. So, and it's on a comeback. How do you see from your vantage point? You've been the voice of experience for 4 decades of Fortune, with what's going on with AI and ChatGPT and all these technologies and the workforce.
There's so much to be said there. I mean, with regard to ChatGPT, artificial intelligence in general, and the effects it will have because of the recent appearance of ChatGPT. It's getting a ton of exposure, a lot of talk, and a lot of worry about this. What will the effects be? And we know a few things. One, people are concerned about, well, is it going to eliminate jobs? Will people have any work to do? Here's what we need to say out loud. Advancing technology always eliminates jobs. Okay, let's not be afraid to say that. At the same time, advancing technology always creates new jobs. And what's even more important, it enables the creation of many, many more jobs that have nothing directly to do with the new technology. That's been the story of technology and advancing technology for hundreds of years, and it's going to happen again. So, yeah, it's going to shake things up. That's what new technology does. But the bottom line result has always been, ultimately, not just more jobs overall, but better jobs overall. And that's why we have had the most incredible increase in living standards over the past 200 years in the history of humanity. Yeah, there's plenty to worry about in the realm of artificial intelligence. The worries I put in the general category of deep fakes, which specifically means videos that seem to show real people saying things and doing things that they never said and never did. And it's undetectable, right?
Right.
But more broadly, deep fakes in the sense of AI impersonating people on your phone, in your email, in your texts. AI has now impersonated people on the tests to be licensed as a physician or to be licensed as a lawyer in several states. People have just for fun given those tests to AI, and they pass the tests. So those are really valid concerns that we need to talk about and figure out how to respond to. But overall, let's not forget the incredible upside that this is going to give us.
Yeah, and one of the themes, having worked with you over the years, is you have a lot to say about disruptive forces, disruptive factors. There's always two sides to every coin. Sometimes there's more than two sides to every coin. You cover economic, political, technological, all these forces that disrupt, business and competition. I want to move a little bit to your keynotes. And some of the main themes that you kind of weave in throughout your keynotes that you deliver to organizations in nearly every single industry, whether it's nurses, tile contractors, drilling and blasting, mining, road builders, financial services, insurance, concrete. I know you've spoken to every possible, bond lawyers. How do you see this disruption? And as you prepare for your keynotes, imparting a view that provides something that's going to make a difference for business leaders today?
Well, there are a few things that can be related to any industry. And I love to do it. And by the way, before anything else, when I'm talking to groups, it doesn't matter what they are, something I really emphasize specifically is simply optimism. And I emphasize this because we are always talking about problems, and there's good reason for it. We got to solve problems. But it gets to be dominating all of the conversation, and we forget how many reasons there are to be optimistic. If you take two steps back from everything we're talking about, what you see over a period of decades, 5 or 6 decades, is an unbelievable historic increase in living standards around the world. Billions and billions of people have been lifted out of poverty. Billions of people are free to pursue their dreams. More people are educated and able to pursue their dreams than ever in history. And just instead of thinking about what you read in the paper, think about the people you meet. Think about the people you actually know. Young people today have more ambition, more energy, more creativity than I've ever seen before. So I try to make sure people have an optimistic view of the future. After that, I say, look, success today is all about, among other things, creating value in new ways, including ways that might sound crazy at first, because they're almost always related to technology in some way. And you think about it and you think, okay, who thought that the idea for Candy Crush was going to be worth more than $1 billion? If somebody said to you, I've got a great business idea, it starts with a game that you can download for free and play for free for as long as you want. Right. They would have said, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. Yeah. But it wasn't. There are all kinds of ways that companies are creating value in new ways that may sound crazy at first. And one thing we all have to be open to is those kinds of ideas. And then we have to be searching for them, figuring them out. And so I don't care what business you're in. We have to keep creating value in new ways and much faster than ever before. And people say, well, come on. Every generation has said that they have to move faster and it's tough and it's more difficult and challenging than ever. It's always the same. I say, no, actually, it isn't the same. For 50 years, the Wrigley Company had 3 products, Spearmint, Double Mint, and Juicy Fruit Gum. That was it. And it made Mr. Wrigley so rich that he built one of the all-time great skyscrapers in Chicago, and he bought Catalina Island off California. Okay, that was with 3 products that never changed. We can't do that anymore, right? So it's creating value in new ways is top of the list. Beyond that, the magic of human interaction, which we've already talked about, but it's really important that people understand this. We talk about technology a lot. We got to remember there is this magic, unbelievably powerful in human interaction. And then the general topic of the pace of change and your ability each person's personal ability to deal with it. Because as humans, we were not hardwired to deal with the advance of technology that we have today. Nothing in our brains, in our makeup, is built to respond to something like that. And so then we go into how you do it, because we've all got to be able to do it. And it doesn't matter what business you're in. When I talk about it, I can make these things specifically relevant, but they're always relevant.
Right. I mean, to your point about change, it's a constant. That's what I'm hearing, like, an unspoken kind of through line there. It's something that we've always had to adapt with. It's not that the specifics might be new, but the idea of adapting and being agile has always been there. And, to your point, last year you mentioned, and it might have been at a speech that I attended, we were together in Las Vegas, an astonishing 94% of CEOs said that their company's business model will have to change in the next 3 years to keep up with that change, to maintain the edge, the competitiveness, and their customers' needs, their workforce's needs. Talk a little bit about like how that plays an essential role in keeping, companies viable today.
Innovation is one of those things that everybody likes to talk about, and everybody agrees it's important. If you say, we got to have more innovation, everybody will nod their head.
Right. But even the word, it's multisyllabic. It sounds important. We've got to innovate,
Right. Everybody agrees. And you're right. It sounds excellent, which it is. But the way people have traditionally talked about innovation has been innovation of products and services, which is important. But the real innovation that we have to focus on now is just what you were asking about, innovation of business models. And that's hard for a lot of organizations, because a lot of organizations haven't had to change their business model, sometimes for many years, sometimes for decades. And so you would have generations of management that maybe never had to innovate the business model in a given business or a given organization. Well, that's not going to happen anymore. Every new generation of management will have to innovate the business model, maybe more than once. And so people have to open their minds to the possibility that this might be necessary. What does that mean? There have been some good examples in the pandemic. I'll mention just one, and that was Chipotle, the fast food restaurant chain. They observed and accepted and embraced the new reality of the pandemic faster than most organizations I know. In March of 2020, a lot of people thought this thing would all be over in 8 weeks. They said, no, it's not going to be. Nobody's going to want to come into our restaurants for a long time. If we're going to survive, we've got to shift the business to takeout and delivery, because that's going to be the overwhelming majority of what we do. So what does that mean? Well, they turbocharged a program that they had just been starting. They spent millions of dollars building special new kitchens at all of their restaurants that were specifically for takeout and delivery. While the other restaurants, many of them, actually thousands of them, were firing people, they were hiring people. They hired thousands of people in 2020, thousands more in 2021. They vastly improved their app, so it was real easy to order your takeout or delivery. And they jumped in and went full charge on this from the beginning. It was a different business model, shifting the way they did it all the way to takeout and delivery. Almost nothing in the restaurant. During 2020 and 2021, 100,000 restaurants shut down in the United States. And when I say shut down, I mean they're not coming back. Right. During that same period, Chipotle's stock price hit new all-time highs. They were able to change the business model on a dime, just about. They embraced the change early, and it was enormously successful. All of us, doesn't matter what industry we're in, have to do fundamentally that same thing.
I'm hearing that Chipotle, I wouldn't even say commendable, extraordinary job of adapting. They might have had a little bit of good fortune, being prepared. They had already kind of been, whether it was a pilot or a beta program or whatever. So they kind of had a little bit of the idea planted, but then you still got to execute it. And they've done this in this new normal of this constant change. Pandemic or no pandemic, the needs and demands of the workforce are constantly changing. In one of your books, you talk about talent. you've written a couple, so I can't remember, talent's overrated or something like that.
You got it. That's exactly it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And, talent is also thinking. It's not just having a skill to be able to cook well or do surgery well or whatever. It's also thinking. And in the strategy part of it all, that's something that is probably the hardest part of it is shifting, trimming your sails, shifting course a little bit. What other organizations have you seen during this period do a great job of that?
Well, I'll tell you, when you look at the big picture of adapting to not only technological advance, but the new challenges that came with the pandemic, and then everything else that's going on in the world, the whole geopolitical environment and how that's changing. The companies I've seen that have done it really well, some of them won't surprise you, some might. You've got to put Apple at or near the top. Mm-hmm. I mean, here it is, the biggest of all of the big tech companies, biggest in the sense that it is the most valuable of them all. And what we've seen in the tech industry lately has been significant layoffs across the industry. All the big names are doing that, with the exception of one. Apple isn't doing any layoffs. At least as we talk now, they have not announced any after so many other companies have. They have kept their performance, financial performance, at an extremely high level. No need to get rid of anybody. They've really done it extremely well. And I have to say also, a rival of theirs, Microsoft, has also done extremely well under Satya Nadella. They've adapted themselves very successfully.
If I may, Geoff, I have another question right there to that point, because the Chipotle story, I mean, look, I portend to keep current and pay attention and make an honest effort to be intentional about keeping abreast of trends and what's newsworthy. And as a booker of speakers, it's important. I want to not just sound informed, I actually want to be informed so that I can serve my clients, right? It seems like the Chipotle story kind of was under the radar. And, maybe I'm wrong, but what comes up is, Twitter's firing 7,500 people, Facebook, this many people, this other large IT, this many people. But I just read, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm going to lean on you as the expert, the dangerous word, you're the expert here. Total net hiring, I think pandemic till now, even though one of the large, whether it's Alphabet or whomever, laid off 10,000, they hired 70,000 or something, I read, during the pandemic. So you have a total net of like 60,000, but that doesn't get reported on.
Yeah, you are absolutely right about that. All of these layoffs are very high profile, and every time one of them happens, it gets heavy coverage. What doesn't get coverage is the monthly reports from the federal government on total layoffs across the whole economy, because they do report it every month. And what they are finding so far is that overall, across the U.S. economy, layoffs aren't unusually high at all. There hasn't been an uptick in them overall. They're at a very low level. In fact, they're still steady at a fairly low level. So layoffs are a big panic thing in some industries, notably tech. But across the U.S. economy, they're simply not a phenomenon, at least not yet. And as you say, that doesn't get reported. I always try to mention it.
It's part of that through line or that core virtue of optimism in your presentations, right? Because
Absolutely.
there's no shortage of the sky is falling, the sky is falling.
Yep.
And it's not just to sprinkle fairy dust and say, hey, this too good is happening. I always find, and I'm not honestly blowing smoke here up the what, it's that there has to be take it with a grain of salt, right? In Spanish, we say tomar con pinzas, like a coherent common sense of it all. Absolutely. Are there things that are alarming, that call our attention, that need to be addressed, that might be a 3, 4, 5 alarm fire? Absolutely. But there are rainbows and butterflies and other beautiful activities going on. And that's kind of the nature of the beast, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely right. And when I talk about optimism, which I do, I always say, look, I have no interest in sugarcoating or happy talk or any of that. I want to look at the data and see if it's rational to be optimistic. And then I take a look at it for the audience and show that actually it is rational. It's just not very much talked about or reported.
A quick anecdote here, if you'll permit me. I had the great fortune of working with, you know how many associations there are in North America, Geoff, right? There's an association for associations, right? Well, I had the good fortune of working with the Unmanned Vehicle Association, namely drones, but not just the drones that fly in the air, submarines, any unmanned vehicle. And we had booked some cool kind of panelists and a moderator. And it was a very interesting conversation because this is a technology that's changing. I mean, week to week, there's infrared sensors and the real-time data that's being inputted back at whatever's controlling the device. You can control the device from a tablet, from a handheld phone, $1 million device. It's fascinating. So the chairman of a very large chip maker was speaking, and they replicated a bridge north of Malibu on Pacific Coast Highway 1, right? Beautiful. It was almost like the Matrix, where they had those flying little machines coming in on those ships. What they did was, at night when the traffic was low, they would bring these drones in. They were basically sensors, infrared. They would get right up on the concrete, the cement, the rock, the material, read the surface, right? And see if there were fissures. And in real time, there would be algorithm calculating if it needs to be shut down right away, the cost, how the duration of the reparation, et cetera, et cetera. Just fascinating. And somebody in the audience or somebody on the panel said, yeah, but typically we would have flag crews on each side of the tunnel. We would, or each side of the bridge, have to close a lane. There would be 30 to 40 people in a crew, get the highway patrol involved. So you're looking at 30, 40 jobs that are being eliminated. And the chairman said, yeah, but this was 500 engineers that had to work on this, the chip, just to enable these drones to be able to read all that stuff. So, you know, on the one hand, we're eliminating jobs and we need to work to help those people. But on the other hand, we're fomenting a whole nother sector of the economy. And, you know, I always feel that that's kind of where you come from on that.
It is absolutely where I come from. All we have to do is take a few steps back and look at the bigger picture. And inevitably, the effect of advancing technology is what you just described in that example. It's a great example. And it is a great example because it exemplifies what happens in the bigger picture.
What are you working on right now that's really turning you on, that has you most excited?
One is the next generation of CEOs. I'm working on a big project now where we are actually identifying future CEOs and talking with executive search organizations, headhunters, boards of directors, and so forth about what is going to be necessary in the next generation of CEOs. What do they need to have? What traits, what skills, and so forth. And it's really fascinating. It is different from what has been valuable. And I don't have time really to go into all of it, right, but it's very, very exciting. The geopolitical environment and how that's going to is affecting all of us now, especially with regard to technology, but not only with regard to that. We're going through a period of real change now, mostly with the U.S.-China relationship under the focus, but beyond that as well. And I don't care what business you're in, every business, if not directly, then only one or two steps away is an international business. So we all have to understand that.
Yeah.
And then finally, what excites me really is, as always, the upside of the trends that I see happening. The things that we are going to be able to do with technology in not very much time are going to be so astounding, not just with obvious information technology, but other technology in medicine and other things. You can look at what's being done, and it's just stunning. So it really actually does go back to the optimism thing.
Yeah, I've been playing with this little app on my phone with AI painting, and you give it a little bit of a clue, like John Singer Sargent doing a True Grit, John Wayne in True Grit, and it will give you John Singer Sargent style of painting, and it finds the True Grit poster or whatever, and it renders in it. It's just incredible what you can feed it. And obviously the user has to learn along the way too, right? So
Right.
that I can dial in and calibrate it. But it's just fascinating that CEO research. I can't wait to see what comes on the other side of that, because, you said it almost passingly. What we're finding is a lot different than what's going on today. And it's not like an obvious thing, but I can't wait to get under the hood of that conversation, maybe in another podcast down the road, because what I'm really attuned into, and I don't know what they are, what are the skills? And I don't love the term soft skills, but what are the non-technical skills are going to distinguish and separate the great leaders, right?
Yeah.
The vision, and then how to deploy and carry it through. Because people can be great technicians, but not great leaders. People can have charisma and charm, but they're poor executors. And it's very demanding out there with the future CEO.
And your instinct is absolutely right. The main things we're coming up with are the soft skills. Not entirely, but mostly. Those are absolutely going to be the skills that distinguish the great future CEOs from the not so great ones.
Well, Geoff, I think that's a great point to end on. That'll be our teaser for our sequel, where sometime down the road, maybe, when the research is all kind of settled in and you feel comfortable and open to share it with us. We're going to get into a part, we're going to completely shift gears. We're going to get into a little bit more lighthearted part of our podcast here. We have, right now, the working name is 20 questions. We're still looking for one, so we're open to suggestions. I'm going to do a little word association, just a rapid fire question, a rapid fire answer. Are you ready?
I'm as ready as I'll ever be.
All righty, here we go. What's the most interesting thing about you that we would not learn from your resume?
I can play the bagpipes.
Who do you look up to?
My mother.
What's your favorite way to relax?
Listening to music and also running.
What's your favorite book?
That's a tough one, but it's probably something by P.G. Wodehouse.
Okay. Social media, friend or foe to humanity?
That's too hard, but I have to tell you, I scarcely participate in it, which I'm sort of ashamed of, but that's it.
What's the most beautiful thing in the world you can think of?
Almost anything in the natural world, a mother and a child as well.
If you could go back in time to any point in history or visit the future, which would you pick and why?
I'd go into the future 200 years to see how humanity is doing. I really wonder. It could be fantastic or it could not be.
That's interesting. What are you most grateful for in life?
Where and when I was born and the parents who raised me.
Beautiful. What are 3 things that bring a smile to your face?
Almost every, I tell you, I laugh at so many things, I don't know what it is.
You do have a great sense of humor. The bagpipes, that's you made history. I mean, I don't know how we've done this with dozens of people so far, and probably we'll be continuing to do this. I don't know if we're going to get a repeat on the bagpipe. That was cool.
Yeah, you probably won't get that again.
No. What's your favorite movie?
I don't know. I draw a blank.
That's fair. What's next on your bucket list?
Probably going back to where I was born, which I mentioned earlier, which was South Dakota, and probably walking up a mountain that I haven't gone up before.
Fantastic. Well, on that ascent up that mountain from your past, we will say goodbye. I just thank you for your generosity, for your introspection, for your views, and just being so easy to have this conversation with. And just thank you so much, Geoff.
Well, thank you, Seth. It's just wonderful talking with you. You have great questions. You're very well informed on all of this. It's a delight to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd like to learn more about this speaker, visit our website at thekeynotecurators.com. There you'll find dozens of videos of speakers that are a perfect fit for your event. If you'd like to reach out directly, please click on the link below in the description. My name is Seth Deckman, and you've been watching Curated Insights.